All right, we are live. Um, happy to be joining us today. Happy to have Alexander Ordonez joining us today. Just want to thank everybody for joining us. Uh, we'll kind of get started a little bit slow, just to let kind of people jump in here. But yeah, excited to have my good friend Alexander on. He's a good friend from college, and just really happy to highlight him and show some of his work and share some of his story. So, um, if anybody has any questions for Alexander or for Gravity Sketch, feel free to pop it into the chat as we're live today. Um, this will be available as well permanently on our community interviews playlist on YouTube after the interview's over. So if you somehow missed it or whatever, feel free to go back and watch it from the beginning. But yeah, I guess I'll just give a quick introduction of myself. My name is Jaron Dorman. I'm the design community manager at Gravity Sketch, and I connect with all of you out there and essentially just like highlight talented designers like Alexander in the community and show just the amazing work that is being done, not only with Gravity Sketch but just out there in the world. So, and hopefully we can learn a thing or two through some of these as well. But yeah, it's a pleasure to interact with all of you. And yeah, that's enough about me. I'll throw it over to you, Alexander, if you just want to go ahead and give like a quick introduction about like who you are and let everyone know what you're all about.
Absolutely. Thanks, Shannon, for having me on here. It's been a pleasure. Really excited to delve into my work. But little about me. My name's Alexander Ordonez. I live in Millburn, New Jersey, where I grew up. I went to Millburn High School. I then went to the University of Cincinnati as an industrial design major, where I, completed 5 co-ops and had the, privilege of being in class with Jaron as well. And today I'm still living in New Jersey, and I'm doing some footwear design. I also have my own company called Soaked Inventions, in which me and one of my classmates, Kendall Turner, we do different consulting work for medical and consumer electronics industries. And really excited to delve into the breadth of my work today and talk about some learnings from different projects and maybe get into my co-op experience at DAP a little bit, where I had various different co-ops in different departments and different types of teams in the footwear as well as medical and toy industry. Um, yeah, a little more about me. I'm a big outdoorsman. I love surfing. I've surfed all over the world. My dad's family they live all over. I've gone to Cabo, Mexico to surf, as well as Israel, among other places. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here and tell you guys a little bit about myself and chat with you, Jaron.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, pleasure to have you here. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, it'd be great to if you go into some of the co-ops and stuff as well and internships. I'm sure that'd be really
sure.
interested, especially for some of the younger viewers, especially like the students and all of that. If there's anyone out there that's interested in going to school for design or footwear, industrial design in general, I think it'd be pretty helpful. Um, yeah, I just want to reiterate and say there's a few more people joining now. I just want to reiterate that, yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and I'll pop them over to Alexander as they come through when it's appropriate time. But yeah, I guess the first question I just want to pop over to you, Alex, is what got it started for you? What was the sort of catalyst for you getting into design? What made you go to design school, industrial design? What was sort of that journey that brought you to that point?
Sure. That's a great question. So, since I was young, I was always pretty artistic. I loved drawing. And in high school, I actually took an AP art class with a really good teacher, Kathleen Hart. And I brought in a sketch of a shoe and this like futuristic motorcycle one day. And she said, "Hey, you got to check out industrial design. I think you'd be really good at this." And at the time, I was just doing fine arts and, I was doing colored pencils and pastels and doing some landscape pieces. Um, and and I looked into it. I found the University of Cincinnati. It was pretty highly ranked. Their ID program is pretty renowned. ended up going there for 5 years. And I think from a young age, I was very curious, and kind of bridging into how I got into footwear. When I was must have been like 8 or 9 years old, my parents used to take me shoe shopping, and I would go into the store. I would look at all the shoes. It would take me hours to like come out and pick a shoe. They really dreaded this day. And I would, go up to the shoes and pick them up and look at the bottoms, and they were so confused as to what I was doing. And I would really analyze all these different shoes, and sometimes even go to another store and maybe a third store and end up coming back to the first store and picking the first shoe I saw. But from a young age, I really was curious about how, this object would affect our interaction with the world. And I was really curious about how, this shoe, which is kind of a piece of my identity, how it's going to affect, my journey and the activities I'm doing. So that was something that I was always interested in footwear. I was never a sneakerhead, but there was something I was always really intrigued by and interested in. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
so throughout the DAP program, I guess my first co-op was with Fisher Price. I did toy design up in Buffalo, New York. Um, and quite honestly, I did want shoe co-ops right away, and I wasn't really getting the attention that I wanted from these different companies. But I remember, I definitely want to live on the coast and be able to surf. But yeah, it was freezing up there. I remember walking home from work, and it was a great job and a great experience. And there were some good mentors over there. I learned digital sketching and stuff. But I would come home and I would sketch shoes. Like I would come home and I would just do pages and pages of these Photoshop sketches. And I knew that if I kept working at it, maybe they would eventually bite. My next job was at Johnson and Johnson for a company called Ethicon, designing surgical devices, and I learned a lot there. I got into SolidWorks, is where I started 3D modeling. So that was really the beginning of that of that type of work for me. And I still wanted to get into footwear, and I kept pushing and pushing. And eventually, for my third internship at Under Armour in the Portland office, they took a chance on me, and it was one of the best days. Getting that email said that they wanted me on their innovation team in Portland, and it was at Under Armour where I really began to grow, like, personally and as a designer. And there's different. My boss was amazing, Tom Ledecky. He really took me under his wing. I delved into biomechanics. I delved into material innovation. I bounced around and talked with inline designers and design leadership, and really got a very holistic view of footwear design. Um, and Under Armour was really the catalyst for my career in footwear, and I'm so thankful for all the mentors that really cared and really wanted me to do well over there. Um, but yeah, so I continued from Under Armour innovation team. Then for my fourth co-op, I worked for Decker's innovation team, and those two teams were definitely very different. Under Armour is a huge, extensive team with so many different types of, they have so many different people with different specialties. Um, and it's a very, I deep dove in Under Armour into a technology that I would try and integrate into the different product lines. Whereas at the Deckers innovation team, it's more fast track innovation. So we're, constantly pumping out concepts, trying to get to market super quickly. And so a little bit about the Deckers innovation team. So right now I'm a contractor for Deckers, and so the Deckers innovation team role is to provide concepts and ideas and technologies to the other brands. So Deckers is the parent company to Hoka, UGG, Teva, Sanuk, and Kookaburra. So the team's job is to pitch concepts to those brands that could help elevate their product lines, as well as a new brand called Deckers Lab, which is really like an experimental brand that is emerging, that can take all of the learnings and all the different technologies, the comfort of UGG and the really well functioning midsole and outsole of Hoka, and the outdoor learnings of Sanuk, and just package them into these cool, unique shoes. And so that's been it's been really cool. But getting back to the last internship, it was at Lifestyle Design. I went back to Santa Barbara where Deckers was, and I worked in this consultancy and got exposure to a bunch of different clients, and ultimately graduated with a freelance gig with Deckers lined up. And so, yeah, to this day, I'm still doing work for the Deckers innovation team, and it's been really awesome. Learning about all these different types of footwear. I've been fortunate enough to work on running and trail running and like super high performance running shoes, different types of shoes. To sandals, performance dress shoes. So I do a lot of Photoshop concepting. So most of I would say to this day, the most work I guess the tool that I've used the most is Photoshop, where, they like to keep me at a creative level there. And, I've done tech packs in the past, but I really focus on just pumping out, new stories and integrating technology a certain way, and just really having a high efficiency in this role. And I really like that, staying in the creative and kind of blue sky territory where I'm able to like stay stimulated and just, keep ideas fresh and stuff like that.
That's awesome. That's really exciting work to be a part of that, and something very innovative, and to be in that very creative space, like, um, being that source for just ideas. I don't know. It just seems really exciting to me. Um,
Yeah. I mean, there's different, footwear design, there's different areas you can get into. There's inline, which I think is definitely more common, where, you're dealing with, you're filling a slot, let's say fall 2022 soccer, and, there's specific colors and a specific story. And I think that's extremely important. And, you could learn so much and really deep dive into one shoe or a couple shoes and take them all the way through. And then there's, the innovation direction where you're more concerned about like an overall package of a certain technology with a certain story that then the brand can use, and that innovation or idea or package can apply to the brand's existing product lines, and it can trickle down throughout the whole company. So if you have a cool innovation, maybe it's not only in the footwear lines, it could also be bridged into apparel and used in these other sectors, that could really, add tremendous value to a company. So that's really the two different directions that I'm really familiar with. And now, I mean, being a 3D designer for footwear brands is extremely common too. And, the whole reason why I started using Gravity Sketch was because I saw all these crazy concepts and with the sub D modeling and the ability to ideate and really sketch in 3D really changed my process, like as a not only footwear designer, but just as an industrial designer holistically.
mm.
So I'm excited to kind of delve into that, about how specifically it's really helped me.
Yeah. Why don't we dive into that a little bit? I'm sure people are eager to see some of your work.
Sure.
While you're kind of pulling that up, there is a couple of questions I do have here. Let's see. One question is, do you prefer, from Juno VHS, do you prefer Gravity Sketch, iPad, or VR? And will Gravity Sketch work well with Procreate new 3D model painting update? So I guess I can speak to the Procreate thing. We don't know as much details yet as how the models are imported. So, but we definitely are very interested in that workflow. I think it can be something really powerful for the community. I didn't know if you wanted to speak, Alex, on what your preference is. I think it's maybe a little obvious what your preference is. You've been using Gravity Sketch VR, so I don't know. Have you
Sure.
tried the iPad app yet, or
I have not tried the iPad app. I mean, it seems like a really useful and cool portable tool.
yeah?
I've only tried the VR,
Hmm.
so I could really
Yeah,
only speak on that. And I mean, I'd definitely recommend the VR because it's fully immersive.
you're right.
You could see these objects in front of you. You could spin them around. You could scale them. I mean, it's a super intimate way to work with your designs.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want, if anybody watching, if you want to go try an iPad out, it's it's what Alex said. It's great. It's mobile. If you want to get ideas down, and if you're feeling you're a little bit more comfortable with like a 2D workflow, and you already have an iPad, you don't have a VR headset. It's a little bit of a softball into the Gravity Sketch ecosystem there. But one other question for you from Isabel Uriarte. I don't know how to say the last name, but it says, "Did you get those internships because of your portfolio?" Maybe if you could just like go a little bit into, well, maybe this is a good softball into what you're going to be going into next. So
Sure.
this will be good to show, I think, what sort of work is acceptable and what maybe like these shoe companies are looking for, and maybe just talk about like the application process and what you want to show in a portfolio.
Totally. So I think the way I scored these internships, I mean, I think it's a combination of things. First, it's your hard skills. Like, what can you do? Do you do Photoshop? Do you do 3D modeling? Are you a maker, a thinker, a sketcher? Um, what hard skills do you offer? It's also like how you present yourself. I think it's important to show what you're good at and maybe not show what you don't want to do or you're not good at. If you don't want to be doing tech packs, don't show all these tech packs. And I think half of it is work and half of it is also personality and fit. So, when you get an interview, they already know you can do good work. They're seeing how you fit into the team and if they like you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to, you know, both put value and time into your work, but also, like, for the interviews, prepare, know your design process, know what you can give to the company and what they can offer you. It's got to be a two-way stream. um, and yeah, I would focus on continuing to develop, your own kind of design language and your own and consistency within your projects and the way you approach design, and really find your voice as a designer. um, I think starting out, it's usually about the hard skills though, and then as you develop further and further into your career and design journey, I feel like it's more about like who you are as a whole package and your voice.
Mm. That's really interesting. Yeah, and it totally makes sense. I mean, in the beginning, it's just like you're still developing that voice, right? You're still developing your professional personality, or not like it's a fake personality, but you just don't have any history anywhere with anyone, and so you're kind of your first step into the professional world is literally your work. What can you do, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and another big point. I mean, another reason that I had all these internships was because of the DAP program. I mean, DAP, like, if any of you are, in high school or you're not in college yet and you're thinking about studying not only design, but engineering or any other discipline, co-op programs are extremely valuable. They, like, some schools already have the relationships with these companies and they trust the school's design process and professors and everything they're teaching. And without that connection of University of Cincinnati to Under Armour and these other companies, I don't know if I would have scored these jobs. So I think just that connection is really worth the tuition you're paying. That's another point that I wanted to make.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good one. I mean, I can attest to that as well. I mean, that was my experience. The co-op experience was invaluable. So yeah, if you're out there and you're looking for schools and they have an internship or co-op program, um, that's I think that's where the gold is, because you're going to learn the absolute most with those experiences, um, and learn what the almost just get a glimpse into the real world. School is great because it teaches you those hard skills, gets you kind of a leg up with skills, but you're very much in a bubble, and you don't really have a good view of how the world really works, how the industries really work, um, unless somehow that school has some, working professionals that are in there. But yeah, those co-op experiences are super invaluable. But I'll go ahead and throw it over to you, Alex, if you want to
Sure.
go ahead and show some of the stuff and kind of go through it. And just as I said before, if anyone has any questions as Alex is going through, maybe I'll wait for a moment and send the question over. Or we can just do it at the end, however it goes. But yeah, take it away, Alex.
Sure. You can see my screen, Jaron.
Yeah, it looks great.
All right. So this is my senior capstone, and I did this project in collaboration with Kendall Turner. He's one of my really good friends, and we teamed up together. He's actually the person that he's a co-founder of Stoke Inventions. And, we got together in school. We realized we had, we're two totally different people with two totally opposing skill sets. Kendall is more, he's a designer with an engineering background. I'm a designer with more of an artistic background. And for any of you students out there, or any designers, like, I want to let you know that collaboration is just so important. And I think before running through this capstone, I think we made a 1 + 1 = 5 situation where we trusted each other in our own areas of expertise, and that allowed us to produce a pretty successful capstone. So getting into the capstone, it's called Air Powered Outdoor Gear, and it actually received the Director's Choice Award. So we developed 5 different tools that help intermediate level outdoor enthusiasts discover and grow. So Kendall and I both are super passionate about the outdoors, and we wanted to bridge an urban outdoor gap that we found, and help people get outside and gain those new perspectives. So here you're looking at a Navigator, a Water Purifier, a tracker, a power bank, and an emergency beacon. And they're all centered around this pump, which is in the center, and they're all powered by air. So all these tools are developed around this new power source that we designed to be durable, approachable, and intuitive in order to bridge this urban outdoor gap that I'll talk more about. And we thought that these tools would allow people to step up to new challenges, unlike some existing tools that were a little too tactical, complex, distracting, and expensive. So per our research, we found that people generally wanted new experiences. That's where consumer spending was shifting. There's this big urban outdoor gap where 34% of outdoor consumers lived in urbanized areas, and we wanted to make tools that they were more familiar with. And also sustainability. 1 in 3 buyers rated sustainability as extremely important in their purchasing decisions. So here we have a lot of people with an intermediate skill set that really seek growth outdoors. And so we delved into what causes growth outdoors. So there's the comfort zone theory. So there's the comfort zone when someone is not very challenged, right? Then there's the stretch zone when you're a little scared, moderately challenged, but you have enough mental capacity to learn and synthesize information. Then there's the panic zone when you're super freaked out and you can't think anymore, you're not growing and you're not learning. So we wanted to keep all of our users in the stretch zone. So how could we do that? And the way that we solved that was finding out what causes panic. So we realized panic in outdoor gear usually comes from these 5 categories: reliability, orientation, separation, communication, and flexibility. So about reliability, we found that modern devices and their batteries have many limitations. How many times does your iPhone break? How many times does the temperature say it's too hot to function? We also realized that most gear does run on batteries, and somehow our solution would need to accommodate their gear using our power source. So for orientation, we realized smartphones are just unreliable. How many times have you seen your location just floating in the woods, and it doesn't give you that, it doesn't inform you about your directions too well. Especially on the street, great, but outdoors it's a little bit worse. Separation, people get a lot of anxiety from separating with groups, and if you get split up from a group in a bad situation, there could be some issues there. Also with communication, I personally don't know. I'm a big outdoorsman. I don't know anyone with a satellite phone. You know, they're too complex. You need a subscription. And we wanted to try and solve this a different way. And versatility. In the market today, there are no purifiers that can purify snow or salt water. And so they don't work in every climate. So following these 5 problems, here are 5 solutions. So here we have the Air Power Bank, where you can have reliable power anywhere. Here's the Air Navigator, never lose your way. Here's the Air Tracker, never lose your group. Air Beacon, get help anywhere. And the Air Water Purifier, purify water anywhere. So these were all Keyshot renders that I photoshopped, or Kendall rendered, I photoshopped into the scene, and we took our own photos just in case you guys were curious how we made these. So delving into the technology, so we knew that air was already a reliable power source, looking at adjacent and parallel industries like big wave surfing. Air, you know, there's wetsuits now that you could pull a string and air inflates and you float up to the surface. Also avalanche inflation packs. So we knew it was a trusted technology. And so now all of our design and ideation all revolved around this power source. So here with some sketching, I tried to show the different shapes that this pill or sphere could be, what the air tank could be, and the constraints were continuous curvature. You know, the tank would have to twist upwards, and so all of the forms were built around this module. So here, Kendall did some physics, starting some equations that started with the desired water volume and ultimately ending in, you know, how much pumping could equate to these different things I'll be speaking about. So this is a little diagram of the air power engine system. So how it would work, the air module would blow air, it would spin a turbine motor, and then there's a power conversion board that would take this energy and then store it into the supercapacitors where the energy would be stored. So here's a basic off-the-shelf component prototype of how air, which you could see on the right, could essentially, with a much larger motor, power a LED screen.
That's super cool.
Actually, scratch that, e-ink display. Sorry about that.
Gotcha.
So here's your air module, your new battery powered by air. So this module uses 3,000 psi of compressed air to power our devices through electrical and mechanical potential. So we thought it was much more reliable and sustainable than batteries because it's durable, it would be unaffected by weather or temperature, and it's 100% recyclable. So the whole heart of this is that, the heart of our argument is that you could pump to recharge anytime. So this would be really useful for long journeys. So 60 seconds of pumping could equal a full headlamp charge, half a phone charge, 24 hours of communication, 3 days of navigation, 5 days of freshwater purification, and 1 day of saltwater purification. So you can see the pump, not too big in size, maybe 1.5 feet
Yeah.
tall. And as you can see, the air module is integrated into here. So this is a part of the design process that I really enjoy. I love sketch ideation. And so my strategy here is just to really just use color blocking and not too much noodling with line weight and stuff. And I find that's a very efficient way for me to ideate extensively. So it all starts around the core problems and developing architectures. So for each of these concepts, for the Navigator and the emergency beacon and water purifier, I had to think about where the air module would be and what the best activation would be in certain situations. Is it a twist? Is it a pull? You know, is there something you'd lift up and press a button? So that was really important. Excuse me. So after the ideation, Kendall modeled up an army of um, of pretty much one of every single one of the tools here, and this way we were able to keep refining and refining until we arrived at some of the final designs, and here are some hot Photoshop sketches. And these take a while. They look pretty. They take a lot of time. And I would say before I found Gravity Sketch, I was using Photoshop and doing a lot of digital drawings like this. And I think they're super awesome, super effective. Takes a while though. So we developed a brand style guide, and the whole idea for the brand Air is that we wanted it to be super approachable and kind of look familiar and trustworthy with the logo. So getting into the power bank, we knew we had to bridge our power source to everyone's existing gear. So here you can see there's a light on the other side of where you could plug in some USB-C ports. And here you can see the internals. So you got the pin, you see the turbine, the conversion board, as well as the supercapacitors on top. Then getting into the Air Navigator. So this Navigator would keep track of your location and provide in-context direction. So if you're lost on a trail, you could always find your way. So ideally, you'd be able to draw your adventure area, upload, and go. And here are the different modes. So there's the navigation mode, the overview mode, backtracking, and elevation. And the little, I guess, button over here, the little force touch sensor, you could switch between the modes. So here we wanted to put it in context. So here's Liz, she's lost. She's trying to find her waterfall, and the Navigator uses its preloaded maps and leads her to the waterfall. Again, these are in context renders that we did with Keyshot and Photoshop. Here's the Air Tracker. So here are the different parts of the tractor. There's a retractable hook. There's also a full color e-ink display and a little bit of rubber here for some durability. So this is the only product that doesn't have the Air module, and it's because you could tap the Navigator to charge it instantly. So the supercapacitors in the tracker recharge in seconds. So here, just to illustrate in context, just to give everyone a better idea, Liz lost her friends. She fell behind her group. And here you can see there's a certain direction and a distance shown on the tracker. She can now find her group. So second to last is the Air Beacon. And so we found that satellite phones were extremely complex and expensive, and we wanted to use a little creativity and try and see if we could figure out another solution. And we thought of this idea where, what if there was this deployable piece that inflates a balloon and brings a radio chip in the air. So what this would do is the preloaded helium module would essentially inflate, and the GPS will acquire your launch location, and then it will drift until it reaches cell service. So once the Air Beacon finds the cell service, it'll communicate your coordinates to search and rescue, as well as friends and family. It's a pretty fun one.
Super cool.
And lastly, we have the Air Water Purifier. So this was probably the most complex of the different products here. And the really cool thing is that, it could ideally purify snow and salt water. And the way it does this is, to overcome the osmotic pressure of salt water, you need tremendous force. So the key to this design was this band, as you can see on the left, that has composite tension bands. And to withstand that pressure, it also has a heating coil that that you will be able to heat up and melt the snow with. So here shows the filter. And here it actually shows the interaction between the devices of the power bank and the water purifier. So the power bank's accessory power output provides the power to this heating coil down here, and it'll magnetically mount, and then the power bank discharges all of its energy stored in its supercapacitor array in seconds. And here you could see a more in-depth view of the band. And that's air. That was my final capstone.
Awesome.
And hope you guys all enjoyed that. It was certainly a fully jam-packed project, and I know Kendall and I learned a lot, and it really came together towards the end. We initially didn't know, like, we wanted to make outdoor tools, but we didn't stumble upon the story of air and how air was going to power all the tools, until months after we started doing any work for the project. So
what was
I think
that?
It's important. Sure.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I wanted to know, what was that moment where you were like, it's air, like, what was that moment? That catalyst.
So that moment, we were ideating and brainstorming, we had all these different tools, but they were different power sources, and we had these cool ideas, but we didn't know how to bring it all together. And one day I guess I was in class, and Kendall texted me, and he says, "Dude, I got it. Like, what if we could actually power this one device by air?" And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And I was like, "What if they all could be powered by air?" And we both started like laughing, because it was kind of ridiculous, but it's also pretty damn cool. We were like, "Okay, I think we got this." And we didn't know what to name it, and obviously air made the most sense in the end. But it's hard, man. It's hard to like pull together all your thoughts and establish your core values and use those as a razor to trim off all the bad ideas, or all the ideas that wouldn't lead you in the right direction. So this capstone was a great opportunity to take all of our learnings, all of our interests, and really just create a full package of something that we are both interested in and passionate about.
We got a question from Matt Whitby. He's asking, was this project completed before you were introduced to Gravity Sketch? Or did that come later, discovering Gravity Sketch and all of that?
Sure. So this project came for me way before I was introduced to Gravity Sketch. I had known of Gravity Sketch. Our professor in transportation design used to use it. But no, for this, I did most of the sketching. Kendall did the 3D modeling and rendering, and we'd work together on the in context and stuff. But Kendall's role is mainly the modeling, among many other things, obviously. But I was not, by this time I wasn't doing much modeling, and I was really heavy on the Photoshop sketching, photo bashing technique. I could talk about if we have time, but no, I didn't use Gravity Sketch yet.
It's a beautiful project and such a cool concept.
Thank you, Jaron.
Yeah, it got featured on. Didn't it get featured on Yanko Design, or?
It did, yeah. It got some decent press. Yeah, we were really excited to see Yanko Design feature it, and Kendall and I actually wanted to move forwards with this, and we still do, and we started a Kickstarter and doing some planning. But I think we both became busy. But in the future, I think it would be a difficult project. It's a brand new innovation. There's we'd have to do so much testing and so much prototyping, and it'd be a process. But we're really interested in pursuing this, and maybe just getting a patent and moving forwards with it.
Yeah. Well, let me put my 2 cents in there. I would love to see it as well. I realize it'd probably be a lot of work, but I think it'd be really cool to bring it to life.
Sweet. Thanks, Jaron. Well, I can get more into some other work and
Yeah,
maybe
let's do it.
delve into some footwear.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Another really cool project I had the chance to work on while I was an intern a while back on the Decker's innovation team. Um, so it's called the KST 21. So this is a super crazy shoe, um, and it has what's called kinetic suspension technology. So as you can see, there's a super exaggerated tail, and there's also some tech in here I'll get into. So we knew that the notions of shape and geometry in footwear haven't really been pushed to the extent that we saw in other activities and industries like skiing, like skis, surfboards. There's different types of surfboards, different shapes, and cars. You have super wide base, you have the super narrow, faster, speedier car. So we felt that like limiting shoes to these idealized proportions like inherently limits its function. So we wanted something that was fast and stable. We also had this really cool idea to have this pronounced tail with this wide base, and we kept going back to this swallowtail or fishtail idea. Nike already came out with an extended tail that was kind of like a spine that was just straight through the center. So we thought this could be interesting to take a different approach, and have a cradled heel and have this encased suspension story. So it was really fun for me was to play a role in developing the swallowtail, testing prototypes, doing sketches. Should it be symmetrical, asymmetrical? What should the rocker geometry be? And so that was really fun doing some product testing. A lot of product testing gets done on the Decker's innovation team. There's my boss, Jean-Luc Diard, who is the founder of Hoka, who I've had the privilege to work with. He goes on 15-kilometer runs a weekend with all of these samples, and he really gets to the bottom of function, which has been a great opportunity for me to learn. So continuing on this, we realized that what this was doing, it was really transforming vertical landing energy into forward propulsion.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially the swallowtail would cause early ground contact, and then it boosts you into, so that's the heel. I like to think of the bottom of the shoe in three zones. So you have the heel where you need to cushion that impact, and then roll you forwards into that midfoot where we had this carbon fiber plate, which we called the carbon bow, kind of like loaded up like a bow and arrow. And then the carbon plate would add a certain rigidity and leverage for you to propel forwards. And then the front of the shoe was, it's supposed to have a certain rocker to just keep rolling you forward. And, Hoka does a really, really good job of this.
Yeah.
So that was the technology. Here's some sketches, I did back in 2019. So maybe 2.5 years ago, but looking at these, you could see the upper, and I wanted to use a matrix material, super breathable and durable, lightweight. And I was trying to figure out where all the overlays would be. And we wanted a super breathable light nose that we ended up using Lycra for. And here you can see these are just Photoshop sketches into pretty high level Photoshop photo bashing visual. So these types of renders is what I spend most of my time. I would say used to, I still do, but I've spent most of my time doing stuff like this,
Mm-hmm.
where, you have different views, side view, top view, bottom view, or, back view. And I can get it to a pretty realistic level. It never quite gets to that same realism that, you can get with like a render. But, if anyone wants any tips on how to, achieve a pretty realistic rendering or Photoshop layering techniques, I'm more than happy to run you through my process. It's been a really invaluable tool for just communicating at a pretty high visual level. And so here you go. You see the swallowtail here, wide base for extra stability. You then see the carbon bow suspension system, and here's the outsole. So the outsole, uses rubber in the black. And I could talk a little bit about, high abrasion versus low abrasion areas. So in footwear, especially in running, typically the highest abrasion areas will be in the heel, and then also in the toe area, and the perimeters generally. And rubbers are pretty durable but heavy material to use. And then what's in white is um, is foam, EVA foam.
Wow, very interesting.
Yep. So here's a super exaggerated photo of the swallowtail. And looking at this now, I think what we wanted to kind of surprise people. We wanted people to think about the limitations of footwear. And I think aesthetically it's all right. Um, I do think though I'm glad that we ended up pushing the boundary and just telling the story and taking a leap. I thought the marketing team did a really cool job here, highlighting what you can do with these shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a really fun one, and I took away a lot of learnings from this project, a lot about outsole geometries and plate geometries and where the plate should be, where it really can't be. A lot of performance information and research that I still carry with me today, and I display in different concepts that I do. And so here you could see I did not design this, but the Hoka, the carbon series, they integrated the swallowtail into one of their designs.
That's very
And
cool.
also I believe the Mach 4. So it's cool to see how, with innovation, it's not always about the end product. It's not about the final design. It's about delivering a story, a technology, something that can enhance, the brand and the product line. And it's really cool to see um, Hoka implementing something that I had a contribution to.
Yeah, I
So
have a pair of Hokas myself, and they're amazing. So,
yeah, no, they're Hoka's really hot right now. A lot of people, and a lot of people love that, oversized foam. It gives a really smooth ride. I think now, there's so many companies that have implemented this high stack midsole and plates. Right now there's in the footwear performance world, there's literally a race of who could have the sweetest, best rolling shoe with plates and really cool surfacing on midsoles. And it's you see a lot of, I follow a lot of, I like to build a visual library like on Instagram by just following a bunch of footwear accounts where I start saving designs I find interesting and whatnot. And then I see China right now is with companies like Linning and X Step and Peak 3D doing some really really innovative stuff that everyone should check out. But yeah, so after this, maybe I could go into what Gravity Sketch has done for me, show some stuff that I've done with Gravity Sketch. So I think the first thing I've done in Gravity Sketch was this shoe I called Hyper Bounce. So this was really a modeling exercise for me. And I mean, just to summarize, my journey, so I did a lot of 2D, a lot of Photoshop. And then when I found Gravity Sketch, I thought it was so cool because now instead of doing these orthographic views and side views, top view, bottom view, hoping it all lined up and, taking, they're with the foreshortening, it's tough to fully design something in 2D and obsess over every angle. With Gravity Sketch, I was able to immerse myself and literally create the shoe starting from the last in 3D, and I could spin it around. I could make it small, make it big. I could put it on my feet, literally the size they would be. And just it affected my design process so positively. Like I was now able to save more than 50% of the time that I would take drawing these 3/4 views, and I would just do it all at once. And with Gravity Sketch, designing footwear became fluid and less choppy. Um, and I could really obsess over every detail in a way that I couldn't with 2D.
So,
So here you can see my first design that I did on Gravity Sketch, that where I really wanted to convey the story of bounce and and I guess flexibility in the outsole, but also just deliver a new visual, a new story.
was this your this wasn't your first sketch in Gravity Sketch, right? But
You're
I
right.
mean,
This was I
but
did I practiced before on another shoe,
mhm.
and I think maybe I sent that one to you. I'm not sure, but this was the first thing that I, created and was like, all right, this is at a level that I'm, really proud of. But no, the first thing that I did was actually years ago in our class with, forget who the teacher was. It might have been Antonio, but I remember I made a shoe last. So yeah, everyone watching that sees this and says, this is either intimidating to you, or, you don't know if you could take it to this level. I started first in class just making a last and a couple overlays, and it looked a little wonky. But then, I kept pushing and kept pushing, and eventually I got used to the VR thing, and I figured out good ways to, line up the points, and I can talk about I guess my process as I continue, going over some concepts. But if you keep working at it, VR and Gravity Sketch is such a powerful tool. I mean, it's literally transformed my visualization abilities. Now instead of just working hours on one sketch, I can do one model and I can render it in infinitely different angles, and there's so much greater output from having a 3D model and a render. And, it's so much more realistic. And it also just allows me to arrive at my, I guess, final design so much quicker and a lot more fluently.
How long would you say it took you to get to this final result? In Gravity Sketch, like creating this shoe, and like how would you compare that time spent on, you know, sketching something in 2D and having multiple views of it, in a two-dimensional way?
Sure. So I would say this final model took around 6 hours, maybe 7 hours to be safe. At this point, I was still working through a couple different building strategies, but I always start with side view color block profiles, and I'll get more into that with my next project. I always start with the side view photo. I'll bring in that side view, and then I'll kind of flesh out all the rest of the details in VR. So the whole process for this shoe maybe took around, 8, 9 hours. Versus if I were to sketch the side view and a outsole view and a top view and the back view, I mean, that would have taken, and with the final render, that would for sure take more time. It's hard for
Mm-hmm.
me to give an estimate, but
Yeah.
I think this definitely shaves a lot of time off my process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, shoes are a complex form, especially when you're. I mean, the foot already is kind of like it's kind of a complex shape, and to design around that, with all the like, especially with this design, the zigzags and like, it's just it's very complex. It's almost just like you kind of need to sculpt. You need some sort of medium that's there in front of you, so you can see it, three dimensionally.
Totally. I mean, our feet are, they're asymmetrical. I mean, we're kind of designing little cars for our feet,
Yeah.
and, it's kind of like transportation, they take you places. But yeah, it's, shoes are interesting. I think my advice is start with a good last shape, try and understand, to design a good shoe, you need to understand where it's going to live. You need to understand what type of forces are going to interact with your shoe.
Mm-hmm.
And those are called force vectors. So a force vector is a force with that's a measurable amount of force applied in a particular direction. So if you understand the forces that your shoe is going to be dealing with, you can then solve, right, for that with choices in, upper materials and outsole geometries and stuff like that. So I find footwear to be kind of like a puzzle, and you're solving for these different forces, and there's different ways to solve it. To get lateral support, you could build your midsole up a little bit higher, so it gives you that support. You could also engineer a strand into an upper to better deal with those forces. So I find it really exciting and a really good and fun culmination of art and science that I can't see myself getting bored of. But yeah, so after this, I can get into maybe a more, I guess, high performance shoe and talk about my process and how I built it in Gravity Sketch. But so I called this shoe the Speed Frame, and it's, again, a rapid design exercise. This one I completed a lot quicker than my last one. And I wanted to explore the interconnectivity between various parts of a performance shoe and their functions. So, usually performance shoes have an outsole, a midsole, an upper. And, now they're having, carbon plates, heel counters, there's all these different parts. And ideally, you design a shoe for it to work cohesively. And I thought it could be cool to just, fantasize about what a futuristic running shoe could be like. So here I start with my color blocking on Photoshop. I find this is a really efficient way for me to just duplicate, try a different one, duplicate, try something a little bit different until I have, 10 to 20 different options. And I find one that I like, and I like to just use a couple different colors that symbolize the different parts. So you know what you're looking at. So I arrived at this top right concept, and I like color blocking because right from this color block design, you can just use this to either add materials later if you want to really develop it further than I've developed this, or you could also use bevel and emboss, which is a really cool tool that if anyone is interested in learning about, I can show you how to use that in an effective way to create these highlights so you don't have to spend all this time kind of noodling and refining with that. But I arrived at this side view that I liked. And after that, I took it right into VR. And I usually start off with, just tracing these profiles, either with lines and bridging the lines with the bridge surface, or just going right into surfacing. So I know the different pieces, right? Usually the upper, I start with the last the same last I used for the hyper bounce I just showed you guys. I brought that last in. I then, created a mirror symmetry, and I went right into creating the frame, and I used surfacing and seeing this 2D image. I had already began mentally kind of thinking about the surfacing and how it would go into it. I didn't want to spend extra time, illustrating this on Photoshop, because I knew I could just jump into it in VR and start doing all the surfacing. For me, the 2D served as, just that beginning step where, okay, I know the design, I generally know the design, I know the story, I understand the proportions, I have a decent idea of what I'm designing, but getting into VR, you could refine it to a whole nother level. But back to process, once I have the last, I started with the frame, I put everything on a different layer, and I just keep refining and I started with the outsole and making sure that the frame and the outsole, kind of interacted together in a way that I liked. So usually at the very end, um, I I model like the inside of the shoe, which doesn't actually go. It's not totally hollow. You know, there's a couple cheats you could do to make it look like there's an inside to the to the upper.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, usually the last thing I do is like the small little details, like this rubber, um, the rubber on the bottom. Also, I like to do symmetry probably 80% of the way. So I like to just keep it symmetrical, keep the maybe start with the foot symmetrical, and then save yourself from moving all these points twice. And at the end, I like to move it into place. And it definitely depends on the design. Like something so crazy like this, a lot of points are moving, and I think it helps to stay symmetrical as long as possible.
We've definitely observed that as well with some of the footwear designers in the community is that even though the shoes are asymmetrical, our feet are asymmetrical, working in that symmetrical workflow in the beginning helps kind of speed up the process a little bit.
Yeah, so you can see here, so this full length frame that, I could say today, totally not feasible. It'd have to be a variable density material, today this would have to be chopped up into plates and, and the frame kind of independently. But I thought it was a really cool opportunity to kind of combine the plate and the heel counter and create this futuristic concept that pushed aesthetics and I guess pushed the way that someone could think about a shoe and their respective parts. So this one was, I mean, these are all fun for me. Like, I think at work, there's a lot of constraints and, there's price points and there's a lot of limitations. And I find that investing in myself and my own work, I find extremely rewarding because I could push my creativity and, I could use Gravity Sketch and really unlock high level visualization and really obsess over what I'm designing in every detail in a really intimate way. And I can't express that enough. So
We got a question from Robert Ordonez.
all right.
How important is outside feedback and the ability to change your perspective when looking at a shoe you are in the process of creating?
So yeah, Robert's my brother. What's going on, Rob? So I think having an outside perspective is so important. Like I'm so deep into design and footwear and aesthetics and I live in this space. And my brother actually has been so helpful in just helping me figure out, what consumers like and what is, what looks approachable, what looks like it's what looks like it's wearable. For me, those lines are, I guess, a little bit hazy, but I think it's really valuable not to just go to your design classmates for feedback, not just designers, but just everyday, people. And I think that, having someone that you trust, that'll, tell you the truth. If your concept is whack, it's, no one would wear it, a good person for feedback would tell you that. And I think that outside references are really important.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So, moving forwards into my most recent design that I call the Advanced Foam Runner. Again, this is for my own personal portfolio. And the idea here was to take a clog and integrate it with running technology. So, I guess foam is like the new wave, and there's so many people putting out these foam concepts. You got Finrush Taylor, you got a bunch of these different, you got Adidas and the foam runner. And I thought it was a cool opportunity to cross-pollinate two categories that we don't traditionally see, interconnected. So I thought it would be really cool to have this foam runner and integrate, some EVA foam, maybe have a one-piece injected molded upper and and see what I could create. So I think for innovation, any of you guys that want to try and innovate in the footwear space, I think a good approach to that is just cross-pollinating categories. I think there's so much opportunity for new and relevant and impactful designs that solve new problems when you do that. And I think for a lot of my project, for most of the projects I've shown you guys, that's that's kind of what I've been doing. For the Air, it's taking the usability of Apple and familiarity with the with the durability of garment. And for this, I guess my process was to start with, again, side view Photoshop sketch. I could take this way farther. I wanted to save time. This gave me a good idea what I was going to model. Took this right into Gravity Sketch, and I started with the same last I started with my other two shoes I showed you guys. And my process was starting with the last, shaping the last to be more, I guess, conform more to the foot.
Yeah.
And I started with this one big crease. The holes weren't there yet. The back wasn't there yet. Started with this last, and then I started laying out the surfacing for this bottom unit here without the foam. So I had this last. I had this bottom unit and without these little details, without the tread pattern, and I had this hole in the middle. So what's cool about VR is that, once I had this hole in the middle, I was thinking, what's this, is there a suspension story I want to tell here? Is there something else I want to do with, the foam inside? And it's cool because you could actually go into the shoe and underneath the shoe and specifically design how high do you want the foam to ride up? Is there any areas where maybe there's not as much foam? So that was a really cool opportunity to use VR to really fine tune a design of mine. But yeah, next in the process, once I had my bottom unit, I then started adding some details. Like these holes are really difficult. I would say were pretty difficult. I started with first mapping out the little points in sub D, all to line up with these windows. So once I lined up all the points, I started with these, I guess, bigger cutouts, and then from the holes that were very large, and I then built the smaller windows. So that was my strategy going into this shoe. So definitely my first, it took a while for me to gain insight into like build strategies.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this one I'm really happy about, the end result and how I was able to just model this in Gravity Sketch. A lot of people use Blender, a lot of people use Rhino to do these additional details, which I'm sure would make my process maybe quicker and easier. But I mean, it's all in there with Gravity Sketch. This is only Gravity Sketch.
I just think that's incredible. It's just I'm still amazed at how tight it is, and I'm curious the tread pattern. How did you get that so perfectly? I guess like wrapped to the, to
Absolutely.
the sole there. What was your process for that?
Yeah, so first I just started with the bottom without the treads, and what I did was I turned mirror on and I just created one of them, and I just put a surface that was just hug the edge, and then I created surfaces that flow just directly through the outsole. So I really modeled one of them and fine-tuned the points and organized the points in a way where I could move the whole line, and it would effectively move everything at the same distance, and just fine-tuning that one tread, and it was mirrored. And then what I did from there was duplicated it and just stuck it right next to it, and I kept duplicating it and then fine-tuning them kind of individually. So it's not perfectly kissing the the tread is actually protruding through the bottom.
Mm,
Um,
I see. I
if
see.
that made any sense.
Yeah, it looks really really great. I was just curious to what your workflow was that for that, and yeah, and especially those cutouts. I mean that's there's no booleans right now, as everyone knows, in Gravity Sketch, and so doing holes is you really have to plan it out, especially when you're doing sub D. So, um, did you happen to have any screenshots of this from Gravity Sketch?
So I not of this one. I can pull up some screenshots of my modeling process for the first one for the first concept as well. The hyper bounce concept. Um, if we want. Um,
Yeah, that's fine. It's okay. If it was on this page, it's fine. But if it'll take a minute, that's totally fine. Don't have to
yeah,
do
no,
that.
you know what? I actually don't have that screenshotted, but I could definitely put something together. If anyone's curious, I guess to hear about my process more in depth, I'd love to send you guys a little folder with a step by step and how I usually approach different footwear challenges.
Yeah,
And
these are
here you
super
have
cool.
thank you, man. Thank you, man. This is actually my first like render in context. I thought it would be a lot harder than it really was.
Hmm.
So in Keyshot, you export the OBJ from Gravity Sketch, drag it right into Keyshot, and you just bring in your image and position the renders right in place. And then you Photoshop on top of the render. And for all of these, I actually Photoshopped on top of the render. Um, some of them quite significantly because in Photoshop, you could use the stamp tool. You could improve these different little details that, let's say, would have taken you a lot of time to model. Maybe you take 2 minutes and use a stamp tool and change the geometry, or change some proportions, change the color. The colors usually aren't perfect,
Right.
um, and the balance of colors. So I guess I've developed this workflow between Photoshop, VR, and Keyshot that I think is really powerful. But again, if anyone has any questions just about Photoshop sketching, about the modeling in Gravity Sketch, about rendering, setting up a good HDRI environment in Keyshot, I'm more than happy to give you guys some tips and tricks about any of that stuff.
We did have from Isabel Uriarte. She said, "Yes, can we contact you for those tips and hacks?" So I'll leave it
Yeah,
to you to answer that.
absolutely. Yeah, shoot me a DM, and I already have for this, for the hyper bounce project. I have some process shots. I also have a step-by-step shoe render Photoshop tutorial, like 6 or 7 steps about how I approach my renders in Photoshop. So if any of you want that, I could send that your way as well.
Awesome. Well, yeah. For your information, there, Isabel, we do have Alex's contact info in the description as well. So if you want to maybe hit him up on Instagram or something like that, what's the best way to contact you, Alex?
The best way is, yeah, you could use Instagram. You could also shoot me an email. And if you go to my website,
Oh
alexanderordonez.com,
yeah,
it'll give you all my information.
awesome,
But yeah, Instagram works fine.
amazing. And we do have, I want to answer this one too. Is this foam or filament? And I think you said that's foam, right? With the oh yeah, the advanced foam runner. So there you go. It's made of foam.
Sure. And I mean, foam could have different compositions.
Hmm.
You can mix foam with different things, and there's so many different, iterations of foam.
Yeah.
I didn't think through the manufacturing or materials that in depth. I think this is just more of like a visual,
Yeah.
like kind of performance challenge. I also wanted to get more into like the more fashion end of performance because
Hmm.
I thought a lot of my concepts were intense and serious, and um, I wanted to like push it to reach different types of consumers as well in like a whole different category.
Yeah. Well, it turned out really
But
awesome, and yeah, I actually would love to own a pair of those foam runners. So, but Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you for your time, Alex. And it was really, really rich with just beautiful work, process, insights into like footwear technology, footwear industry. I really think this is a great one for people that are interested in footwear and just design in general. And so I just want to thank you for your time and for taking us through, yeah, your journey and some knowledge that you've picked up along the way.
Thank you, Jaron. I really appreciate you having me on here, and it's been a pleasure. And looking forward to share new designs and also hear some new Gravity Sketch tools. And you guys are growing tremendously, and I think Gravity Sketch is for sure the future. So many companies are already integrating it into their pipeline. It's really merging design and engineering on a level that we haven't seen before. And yeah, man, it's been a pleasure, and looking forward to talking to you again soon.
Awesome. Well, I do have one last question for you.
All right, let's hear it.
Something I've been asking a lot of the guests lately, which is there any advice, parting advice that you'd like to give to students that are watching, professionals that are watching as well? Just I know you're still pretty early on in your career. I mean, you're kind of at where I'm at, I guess. But
Yeah.
I think there's still always tons that you've learned even now. And yeah, if there's anything that's impacted you that you kind of want to pass on, or anything in that regard.
Sure. I think one thing that sticks out to me throughout my whole process, like the design stuff is awesome and fun, and and there's always room for learning. But I think it's like the personal relationship part of things um, that I think is really important. Like maintaining a relationship with your coworkers,
Mm-hmm.
um, and your classmates. Our classmates are going to be leaders in design one day. And I think in order to collaborate and to, have these people, care about you and your journey and your work, it's good to, you know, keep in touch with all these people that have made an impact in your career so far, and start building and build a network. I think when I was at Under Armour, it wasn't my hard skills, it wasn't my hot shoe sketching ability that I guess gave me success there. It was the way that I was interacting with people, and staying interested, and being curious and showing that I care, and and they cared back in return. So I think a big thing, especially with COVID, and remote work now, it totally changes the human to human interactions, right? So now you can't walk around on a big floor and check in and with people at their desks. You got to reach out, and you got to
Yeah.
keep tabs on them, and update them with your new work. So I think keeping your network close, um, and valuing, and focusing on like the human relationships is
Hmm.
my best advice.
Awesome. Yeah, great piece of advice. Stay connected, everyone.
Yep.
Don't let your friends or colleagues kind of dissipate. It's a great piece of advice there. Um, well, I just want to thank you again, Alex, and thank you everyone for joining, especially if you stayed till the end. If you joined a little late or in the middle, this will be available as soon as it's over. You can go and watch it um, from the beginning. It'll be in our community interviews playlist. Um, and yeah, with that, I thank you, Alex, and yeah, I guess it'll be
All
this,
right.
till next time.
All righty, Jaron. Thanks so much, and looking forward to chatting soon. And again, let me know if anyone has any questions or any follow ups. I'm here and more than happy to help you guys.
Awesome.
All righty.
Sweet. We'll see you, everyone. Thank you.